What will it take to make our power grid greener and more sustainable? It's a big question. The president is hailing the jobs a green revolution would create, and a big part of that may be harnessing the power of the sun. Solar power isn't new, but it also isn't booming just yet in a way that it can be a game changer. In this week's It's Not Too Late, Ginger Z looks at how that's changing one panel and one home at a time.
Hi, I'm Ginger Z, and it's not too late. Can we take a moment and talk about that thing? Yeah, the sun and solar power. We've had the technology to do solar for 70-some years, and we've known that the sun is pretty powerful for thousands. So why don't we see solar panels on every house, and why is our grid only 3% powered by solar? The cost of putting those solar panels on your house has gone down 70% in just the last decade. And the cost in the future going to be cut in half by 2030.
The solar industry in the U.S. has plans to grow too. In 2020 alone, just over 230,000 people worked in solar. But according to the National Solar Jobs Census, that number will need to exceed 900,000 workers by 2035 to reach that 100% clean electric goal set by President Biden. And get this, if we put solar panels on just 22,000 square miles, which is about the size of Lake Michigan, that would be enough electricity to power the United States.
Just this week, the Biden administration approved a solar farm that could power 90,000 homes in California.
100% carbon pollution-free electric sector by 2035.
And it appears that goal is possible to achieve. Okay, so the technology has been around for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what blows my mind, like, why? Why has it taken this long?
This is Darren Kukusuk, a researcher working at the Rutgers Center for Green Building. His most recent project focused on why people choose to go solar.
The other thing people, like, baseline say is, well, I live too far north. That's not necessarily something that excludes you from solar.
Absolutely not. We've seen really aggressive policies in Massachusetts, for instance, and Connecticut. Part of my research was on trying to figure out what drives the higher adoption rate for the solar panels in residential buildings. And top two things is how much sun you get and what's your electricity bill.
Residential solar panels, on average, cost between $10,000 and $25,000, depending on where you live and your energy needs. There is currently a 26% federal rebate, and each state has different incentives.
It depends on your electricity bill, and also it depends on the space you have available on your rooftop. But these systems typically pay themselves in 7, 8, 9 years.
You can own the solar panels, but you can also finance them and even lease them.
And what is community solar? Describe that for anybody who might not know.
Community solar is basically you do not have to have the solar panels on your rooftop. And there's let's imagine a solar farm, and you can either purchase solar panels in that solar farm, or you can, it's like a subscription system, pay for that and still receive the benefits.
That's what made the most sense for Robert McHugh. He retired last year, and he's been loving the savings.
My cumulative kilowatt hours are 0, and then once the sun comes up in March, these are all negative numbers, which means I'm getting back.
Like most people, Bob had a ton of questions before diving into solar.
Snow on top of the panels, whether in the winter, there's all this fear that, oh, then you're going to be without electricity. None of which was true.
So you're always on the grid. You just get the credit for the solar that you
Correct. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that people don't know or don't realize is the case.
We're not divorced from that grid at all.
Yeah, and you still have the backup. It's still your buddy.
Yeah, we always have electricity. Yes, and that line runs seamlessly, and no one has ever seen it.
And then it goes right into
that box. Yep.
And that's how it gets connected to the grid.
In New Jersey alone, pre-pandemic, there were more than 300 companies that install solar panels.
This one right here, this is a 350-watt panel.
Phoenix Energy was the one that worked on Bob's.
Solar's actually been around for over 100 years at this point.
And if you want to wait another 5 years and kind of hope that there's some massive advancement, you're just going to keep paying, the utility company at a higher rate. You're going to keep paying for your delivery charges. You're going to be leaving a larger carbon footprint.
Each state is different. The cost of energy is highest in states like Massachusetts, Connecticut, and California. Not only is the cost different, but the rules are different. Here in New Jersey, the energy that you make with your solar panels goes back to the grid. Then you get the credit. That also happens in Nevada. Property brother Jonathan Scott made a whole documentary about it.
I was putting solar on my home, and I got the system installed, and then I was met with so much frustration from the utility that they would not just flip the switch and let me start using my solar.
The doc takes a deep dive into the policies that'll be needed to expand solar power across the U.S.
Why do we not have a federal policy that makes it so the incentives are the same for everybody, the access to the technology is equitable?
But as a consumer, knowing that I could see potentially environmental freedom coming with financial freedom, I still am not sure, is this the right time?
It's so confusing to even apply for some of these credits and these incentives that no wonder a lot of people don't. Let's make it easy. We know that we have the technology. We could lead the world and truly show everybody how it's done. And I feel like that's something we should be doing. We have everything, all the means to be able to do it. And the only reason it's not happening is because of the misinformation.
Overall, he says everybody should have the option to go solar.
The sun does not sign exclusivity deals, so the sun is there for everybody. So let's find a way that we can make sure that we're working together. This is where the jobs are. This is where the strong economy is going to be. And this is what is going to make it so it is healthier for our families.
So the moral of this story is do your research. If you check it out, you might be surprised with some of the changes or things that you thought were true that aren't anymore. I'm Ginger Z, and it's not too late.
Ginger Z breaking down what a solar-powered future looks like. Our thanks to you.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
As inflation sends energy costs through the roof, the price of electricity up almost 16% and gas 33%. More homeowners now going solar to save money. In 2021, the residential solar market grew 30%, setting a new record with more than 500,000 installations nationwide. The surge in popularity expected to power through the next decade as federal and state governments offer clean energy tax credits and other incentives, encouraging more Americans to make the switch.
Today I'm having 25 panels installed.
Stephen Zampieri has lived at this home in Wyckoff, New Jersey for 2 years. He says his July electric bill hit $500, $100 more than last year. The rising cost sparking his decision to install solar panels. The price tag on the project, nearly $40,000. But he's factoring in a 30% federal subsidy and state incentives that he says will pay off in the long term.
Once you do the math, this whole project will pay for itself within the decade, and then I'll have free power after that.
The panels were done in a day, and he hopes to save more than $2,000 annually. So how do solar panels work? Well, they generate electricity during the day, rain or shine. And if you add battery storage to your system, you can keep your home running even during a blackout.
When we think about solar, we think California or Florida, but we're starting to see incredible demand in the Northeast, like New York, New Jersey, as well as the Midwest.
Dr. Ramanan Krishnamurti serves as Chief Energy Officer at the University of Houston. He says it's not just money. Solar homes rely less on the nation's aging power grid, which Krishnamurti explains has become increasingly susceptible to weather and cyber attacks.
What should you consider before installing solar panels?
First, geography. Second, how your house rooftop is located. Are you in the right direction to get maximum efficiency of those solar panels?
Though widely considered safe, Krishnamurti says solar panels can pose a minimal fire risk.
It's a live wire. If it is not installed right, you're going to create a challenging, hazardous situation.
To figure out if solar panels make sense for you, try online solar calculators like these. Just plug in your information and they'll spit out your potential savings. Industry experts say the average system costs $20,000 and takes 7 to 10 years to pay for itself. Remember, check your state and your power company for incentives. If you decide solar is right for you, experts say do your research to choose a provider. Find a reputable company likely to stay in business for the lifespan of the system, and make sure it comes with a comprehensive warranty. Tips to help save money and secure a brighter future.
In the immediate term, it's the energy bill going away, but in the longer term, it's knowing that I am helping to make the world just a little bit better for my son.
And by the way, Dr. Krishnamurti says you can minimize labor costs if you plan that installation around the time when your home might need a new roof anyway. And make sure that you schedule your installation before major weather like snow on the roof. That could be a real delay for the process. So it's important to think about it, do the homework.
Vic, why do experts say now is the best time to make the switch?
Well, the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, that offers a 30% tax credit to anyone who is installing solar panels between now and 2032. So you want to get in on that, especially because those funds could eventually run out.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Thank you, Vic.
Hey, Vicki, thank you.
All right.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.
Kicking in that
Welcome back to CBS Saturday Morning. When someone starts powering their home with solar energy and stops buying power from their local utility, many like to think they've gone off the grid. But in many areas, they're not as independent as you might think. Many profit from selling power back to the community, and often without covering the cost of the maintenance of the grid itself. Now, some say their sunny deal is creating a dark cloud for others. Barry Peterson has the story.
If you think there's nothing controversial about the value of solar energy,
Please don't take our sunshine away.
Welcome to California.
Yeah, well, anybody who's getting such a sweet deal doesn't want their sunshine taken away.
UC Berkeley professor Severin Borenstein studies the economics of renewable energy. And yes, this controversy is all about money.
Well, if an industry turns out to be not cost effective, we really need to recognize that and find other ways to cost effectively address climate change.
When it comes to turning the sun into electricity, California leads the way. Powered by laws like the one mandating that all new homes must have solar power. But critics say owners get paid too much for the power they sell back to the grid and pay too little to keep the grid maintained and upgraded, a stance the solar industry disputes. So people who have solar, do they in any way contribute to helping with the grid?
Well, absolutely. They reduce the strain on the grid.
Nate Otto is president of Hot Purple Energy. His company recently installed a solar system on my Palm Springs home. He believes power companies want solar users to pay much more each month because they are losing income to solar.
I believe the utilities need to look at a different model. You had the blacksmiths that needed to change and start making wheels for cars, and all they wanted to do was keep making horseshoes. And so they're upset that they're not going to make their profit on their horseshoes.
Solar sells on the promise that owners save enough money that in roughly 8 years, the system will pay for itself, but keeps generating free power for decades more. And the sales pitch works. The industry is booming. Solar jobs increased 167% over the last decade, and now employs more than 250,000 American workers. And making solar users pay more would make solar less attractive, and some say that would wallop the industry. What does that mean for the industry and the people you employ?
Well, it's going to reduce it. There's going to be some sort of industry there. It's going to be a cottage industry rather than the growing, thriving industry that's really providing good, well-paying jobs for a lot of people.
But electric companies say there's a big problem. Take my experience. My electric bill averaged about $500 a month before solar. That included money to maintain the power grid. Today, after spending more than $60,000 on a solar system, it's about $10, with pretty much nothing going for the grid.
This is an interesting statistic.
Barry Moline is executive director of the California Municipal Utilities Association made up of nonprofit power companies. He believes solar owners should pay a monthly fee to keep the grid going.
Well, another way to look at it is if you own a car, it's like paying taxes for the roads. If you don't pay your taxes, pretty soon the roads are going to have potholes in them and they're going to crumble. So everybody needs to pay their fair share of the roads. In this case, everybody needs to pay their fair share of the grid.
So at the moment, the solar people are getting the car, but they're not paying for the roads.
Exactly.
And solar owners not paying for the grid raises rates for non-solar users who must make up the difference. Many are low-income people who can't afford solar systems. Berkeley professor Borenstein.
All the data show that the customers who are putting in solar are disproportionately wealthy. And so when customers install solar, they are generally shifting costs onto people who are poorer than they are.
And that's exactly what the Reverend Frank Jackson Jr. sees in his faith-based community development work in Southern California.
A child, a spoiled child, that's been receiving this great allowance, all of his life. And now at 18, it's being told that it's got to start sharing. Change is hard for everybody. If you've been used to getting this, and now all of a sudden someone is coming in and telling you, you've got to now pay your fair share.
Like the sun, the solar industry sees more bright years ahead. And with that, more debate on who pays and how much to capture the world's freest source of power. For CBS Saturday Morning, Barry Peterson, Palm Springs.
And already you have companies that are popping up that are granted opportunities to help folks from lower income neighborhoods and communities afford solar power. So there is like something coming up from the other side trying to ease that burden.
But you still need to take care of the grid, which
Yes.
I think of Barry's bill, if it went 500 to 10, what if it just went down to 75 and $65 at least goes to the grid? Sorry, Barry, not trying to make you pay more, but it just makes sense.
Absolutely. It's an interesting part of the story
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't really think about when they think solar.
Yes. Good point. Glad we did it.
When it comes to power, people taking matters into their own hands, more specifically, onto their own roofs.
There just had to be a more cost-effective way to do it and a more green way to do it. So solar was really appealing to me.
More homeowners turning to solar, sparked by the impact of climate events this past year. Days-long power outages in Texas and California's power shutoffs to prevent wildfires drove a 300% spike in customer interest for one national solar company's solar panels and battery storage systems.
The need that customers have for resiliency in all parts across the country. One of the reasons that I think President Biden is so committed to taking on climate change is because we're starting to really see the impacts on people every day.
For Kelly and her family in Los Angeles, it's the potential for rolling blackouts.
It puts a shutdown on everything. So having looked into the battery backup system was really important for me too, because we learned that we could still power our house even when there's a brownout or a blackout, and we don't have to worry about losing our food or losing our hot water and things of that nature. So we can still actually be functioning when the rest of the town is out.
The added battery system is a game changer for the industry.
One of the reasons people were skeptical of solar in the past is they would say, well, it's only there when the sun shines and we need power at night. What we have now is you have a battery that you can put on with your solar panel. It'll allow you to store power when it's sunny, when there's a lot of excess power.
Currently, more than 2.5 million homes across the country have their own solar grids. At least 70,000 of them also have batteries for storage. Because of the spike in interest, one energy research group predicts the battery numbers will nearly double by the end of 2021. President Biden's American Jobs Plan proposes an extension of investment tax credit programs for solar and energy storage.
How much do you think people adopting this, what does the divide seem like of oh, this is beneficial for me and the cost effectiveness versus, oh, this is good for the environment?
Folks are realizing no matter what you believe about what it's caused by, the politics of it, people are feeling the impact. People are looking at how can I just have more security, not just in access to power, but security in terms of how much is this going to cost me, right? Over the next 10 years, 20 years.
The pandemic also playing a part.
We all started working at home and everything like that. We just became huge power users. So I think now more than ever, it's time that we take a look at what we're doing and try to be better, not only for the costs, but just better for our carbon imprint here on the planet.
Overall cost varies for each customer. The average solar rooftop system comes in around $20,000 plus another $10,000 for battery storage. Some companies offer leasing options too, and most customers could save nearly 50% in energy costs over the lifetime of their system.
We will see approximately $800 to $1,000 savings per bill in the summer months. So that's huge. It's just money in our pockets, all for just making a switch that's actually better for the world anyway. So worth it.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
California is launching an experiment to cover canals with solar panels, or solar canals. If scaled up, the plan could save billions of gallons of water in the drought-ravaged state, while also powering millions of homes with renewable energy. Project Nexus in the Turlock Irrigation District launches in mid-October 2022. The $20 million state-funded project is due to break ground in 2 locations. One is a 500-foot span along a curved portion of the canal in the town of Hickman. The other is a mile-long straightway in nearby Ceres. Brandy McEwen is a project scientist at the University of California, Merced.
First of all, covering canals with solar panels would reduce evaporation, so we could save water. Secondly, it would avoid land use. Thirdly, it could, by shading the canals with solar panels, it would reduce aquatic weed growth. And lastly, there's a cooler microclimate. So water heats up more slowly than land, and this could enhance the efficiency of PV electricity production.
It was McEwen's 2021 research paper that inspired the Turlock project. It's the first of its kind in the US and is based on a similar project in the West Indian state of Gujarat. Modern California was built thanks to 20th century infrastructure that delivers water from the wet north to the arid south. It's a network that today totals 4,000 miles of canals.
So if we implemented solar canals statewide across the 4,000 canals, we estimate it could produce 13 gigawatts of renewable capacity, which is roughly half of what the state of California needs to meet their renewable capacity goals to have carbon-free sources of electricity by 2030.
McEwen's research also calculated water savings of 63 billion gallons, enough to supply 2 million people and irrigate 50,000 acres of land. Once construction is finished, experts will study variables like net radiation, air and water temperatures, relative humidity, wind speed and direction, and water quality. From there, officials will be able to make recommendations on how to scale the project statewide. Josh Weimer is External Affairs Manager at Turlock Irrigation District.
We have renewable energy mandates that we need to meet as an electric provider, and so this is a potential option for us to meet that in the future. We have 250 miles of canals, and so if this is something that works on these first 2 miles of Project Nexus that we're doing, there's the potential that this could scale, and this could scale to multiple locations throughout our service territory.
It is a waiting game for solar energy customers and those thinking about going solar. They're waiting and watching to see if Governor DeSantis signs a bill that would mean bigger electric bills for some customers.
News 6 investigator Eric Sandoval uncovered some ways people are still trying to save money before this law would take effect. Eric?
Yeah, get a load of this one option we found, guys. Imagine getting 200 of your friends and neighbors together, going to a solar panel retailer and saying, what kind of deal can you give us? Well, that's the idea behind solar co-ops. They have gained a lot of momentum here in Central Florida, but some utility companies and legislators say that's part of the problem. Megan McCollum and Jonathan White say they wrestled with their electric bill.
It just kept going up. No matter what we were doing.
They were probably between $150 and $200 a month.
We couldn't get it lower.
And you guys were struggling to get them down, weren't you?
We did everything that we could think to try. We did the installation. We had the energy company come out and give like a survey of what they recommended. We replaced the water heater.
But they say nothing really brought down the cost. They said they stumbled across a company called Solar United Neighbors, which is a nonprofit that brings people together who are interested in getting solar panels and then helps them buy them at a bulk rate together from the retailer. That was 5 years ago. What are your electric bills looking like now?
Now we just pay the minimum that is charged just to be connected to the grid. So
she says that amounts to a monthly bill of around $15 a month because they're selling the excess solar power they generate back to the electric company, a practice called net metering. News 6 investigated, and we found out since 2016, the number of Florida households installing solar panels has gone up 467%, totaling nearly 100,000 across the state. Over that same time period, Florida utility companies credited those solar customers more than $4.6 million to buy their excess solar energy at a retail rate.
CS for household 741, a bill to be entitled and act relating to net metering.
Because of that, the Florida House and Senate have now approved new legislation that would reduce how much solar customers can sell that solar energy back for.
83 yeas, 31 nays, Mr. Speaker.
Show the bill passes. Read the next bill.
For those who get solar panels installed by January of 2024, they'll be able to sell their energy back at full retail rates for the next 20 years. But those who wait will risk seeing a lower rate, cut in half by the year 2028. That means potentially higher energy bills. So Florida Power and Light was one of the driving forces behind this net metering bill, and they tell us this basically undoes what they call outdated rules on selling that power back, especially with the number of solar households growing in the state. Solar United Neighbors is looking for more people to join their new co-op group in Seminole County. We put information on how to join that on our website, clickorlando.com. There's a lot of moving parts to
And
this.
you mentioned there is a growing demand for people wanting to do this, wanting to save money and do something better for the environment. So if this goes into effect, could we be losing jobs because of this? Because people wouldn't do that?
Absolutely. There's a whole industry that is linked to this. And there's also concern that this legislation is going to deter people from going solar. That means less jobs for them. They point to Nevada, actually, where a similar law was passed. Solar demand dropped. Solar retailers pulled out of the state. And that left hundreds of people there without jobs. Here's the thing, though. That law was eventually changed. And some people are hoping, they're appealing to the governor now not to sign this, but his spokesperson says right now it looks like he's going to do it.
A lot of people just don't understand why they're doing that.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
The vote wasn't even close, by the way.
No.
Yeah, crazy. Eric Sandoval, thank you.
You got it.
Solar energy and resilience have sparked a lot of discussion in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. One Florida community that's 100% solar powered made headlines when it never lost power throughout the storm.
And Local 10's Amy Viteri takes a closer look at the benefits of having solar power during hurricane season and why some customers feel there are still too many obstacles.
I had between 2.5 and 3 feet of seawater in my home.
This is how Hurricane Irma left Cindy Lewis's ground floor home in the Florida Keys in 2017.
So everything I owned in the house was destroyed.
Forced to tear down, Lewis rebuilt on the same lot in Long Key. The new house sits on stilts well above sea level.
Among all the steps Cindy Lewis has taken to make her new home more resilient, one of the biggest investments she's made is up on her roof.
Well, let's put it this way. I have not had a power bill in 2.5 years. I have produced enough energy here in my 15 solar panels on this little roof to completely power the house every month and sell back to the grid.
Lewis says she's now looking to purchase battery storage for her system to have power even in the event of an outage.
Which will absolutely give me peace of mind. I have friends who have battery backups, and on the occasions where there is an outage, the transition is seamless.
This September, in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, this 100% solar-powered community made headlines when it never lost power during the Category 4 storm. Babcock Ranch sits around 15 miles from hard-hit Fort Myers. Its field of 700,000 solar panels, managed by Florida Power and Light, seemingly untouched. A spokesperson for FPL telling us while the panels held up well in the storm, their storm-hardened grid and underground lines at Babcock Ranch helped maintain power.
I think Ian is giving us an opportunity to think about how do we want to make our communities more resilient, and looking at solar and solar plus storage is a really good option.
Laura Telez is the program coordinator for the nonprofit Solar United Neighbors in South Florida.
So it is important to understand that unless you have battery storage, if the power goes out, even if you have solar, your system will shut off automatically, and that is to protect any utility workers.
But in the Sunshine State, many solar users feel the technology has come up against too many roadblocks. This year, Florida's legislature passed a controversial bill backed by FPL that would have largely done away with what's known as net metering, the process through which solar power users lower their bills, getting credit for excess energy they produce. Ultimately, Governor Ron DeSantis stepped in and vetoed the bill, citing inflation and escalating bills, saying the state of Florida should not contribute to the financial crunch that our citizens are experiencing. FPL also increased rates and imposed a minimum base bill, which went into effect this summer, infuriating many customers now forced to pay a minimum of $25, whether they use that power or not. Solar users like Jim Blankenship feel particularly targeted by the policy.
That makes me buy energy that I don't have access to as a solar customer. And that's not true for non-solar customers.
Blankenship, who lives in Vero Beach, argues the energy he's paying for and not using would be enough to run an electric car for an entire year.
I believe that we were being penalized. The energy business, the solar business is being penalized.
And even with the draw that this is pulling down, I still have a zero energy bill every month.
Lewis, who lives in the Keys, is not an FPL customer and not subject to that minimum base bill.
Remove these obstacles so that people can at least make that choice and make it an affordable choice for everybody, or more affordable for more people.
Amy Viteri, Local 10 News.
Amy, thanks. And in response to criticism for the minimum base bill, an FP&L spokesperson tells Local 10 the bill helps ensure other customers are not subsidizing those with low or zero usage, saying it is an alternative to increasing the base charge, which would affect everyone.
In our Eye on Earth series, we can share a bit of good news in the battle against climate change. Cleaner, renewable sources of energy, such as wind and solar, are generating more power in the U.S. than coal. That's encouraging because burning coal produces planet-warming emissions that make sea levels rise and weather more extreme. CBS News senior environmental correspondent Ben Tracy visited a school district in Arkansas that's turning sun rays into paydays.
Let's review real quickly.
Jeannie Repke has been a teacher in Arkansas for 24 years.
Why are you a teacher? Oh my gosh, the students. Absolutely, completely the students.
Can I assume you don't do this for the money?
If you're in it for the money, it's the wrong profession. It's not the right choice.
Repke's school district in Batesville, Arkansas, prides itself on putting students first. But when it came to paying its teachers, Batesville was next to last in this part of the state. Salaries averaged about $45,000.
And we weren't keeping people because of that.
Michael Hester is Batesville's superintendent. He was losing teachers and having a hard time getting new ones to move to this rural Arkansas town of about 10,000 people.
People aren't in this business obviously for the money, but they should not have a vow to poverty to teach either.
Thank you.
Jeannie Repke has been working 5 nights a week at the local community center just to make ends meet. But then she started hearing a rumor.
Oh yeah, teachers love to talk.
About an unusual solution to Batesville's budget problems.
At first you're like, what's that about? Really, what's that about?
That would allow this school district to truly live up to its name.
Don't sleep on Arkansas. We'll surprise you every time.
The school took an unused field out back and filled it with hundreds of solar panels. It also put up a new solar canopy stretching across the entire front of the high school. In all, nearly 1,500 panels aimed at recharging Batesville's budget.
Batesville's the pioneers, and they really did pioneer solar in Arkansas.
Rick Vance works for the local energy company that helped the district save more than $600,000 in utility costs.
They did it at a time when no one else was doing it, and when now everybody's doing it.
Solar power costs a lot less than it used to, mainly because it's now cheaper to make the panels. In the past decade, the price of solar has dropped 89%. So to both save money and the planet, more than 7,000 schools across the country are now using solar power. That's up 81% in just 5 years. But as far as anyone can tell, Batesville is the only school district that's turned panels into paychecks.
Batesville has reduced the checks they write to utilities and increased the checks they write to teachers.
With the money it's saved and made by selling electricity back to the grid, Batesville has handed out bonuses 2 years in a row, boosting every teacher's salary by as much as $15,000. The district, once one of the worst, is now the best paying in the county.
Are you getting more resumes these days from teachers who want to come work here?
Not only are we getting more resumes, we're getting fewer resignations.
That's good.
Jeannie Repke has seen her pay go up by thousands of dollars, enough to dig out of debt and cut way back on her hours at the community center.
Thank you.
Did you ever in your life imagine you'd get a raise because of solar panels?
No, that would not have been one of the things that I thought. But what a great idea. The sun's going to be shining anyway, so why not cash in on that?
And she's grateful her school realizes that putting students first starts with their teachers.
It's good to know that they care about us. Feels really, really good.
Now, our teacher Jeannie says one of the best parts about not having to work all those hours at her second job is she has more time to help out her students who are learning from home because of COVID. And you know, schools across the country are using their solar panels in different ways. Here in Washington, D.C., this school put their solar installation above their parking lot. Anthony, you get a little solar shade here when you park your car.
I like everything about this story, Ben. Thank you very much. More pay for teachers, solar panels.
And we like teacher Jeannie.
We do. I wish she was one of my teachers. Yeah.
Jump off the
screen.
Put
a solar panel in front of her, you'll pick up power.
Yeah, we like her.
Yeah, she's great.
That was great, Ben.
Harnessing the power of the sun and energizing efforts to save the planet. Solar energy projects are popping up all over the country, including here in the California high desert.
This property is about a 200 megawatt project itself.
Clearway Energy owns and operates this facility about 2 hours north of LA. The company just getting a green light from the Interior Department to build a solar farm on federal land outside Palm Springs.
So our Victory Pass Erica project, when it's complete, will be 465 megawatts of solar and 400 megawatts of battery on BLM land.
The farm coming to this land is the Bureau of Land Management's first development approval as part of its Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan.
President Biden and Secretary Haaland have asked us to ensure that we deliver a carbon-free future for the country, that our electricity in 2035 is carbon-free. And that means we need to turn to renewables and turn fairly quickly.
The Bureau is looking at dozens of proposals for clean energy projects on public lands. Last year, about 20% of all electricity generated in this country came from renewable sources, and that number is projected to tick up every year.
So we get reflection off the ground that hits really the bottom of the module.
Sort of underneath.
Underneath, exactly.
We walked through one of Clearway's solar farms, similar but about half the size of the new generation and storage project BLM just advanced, a project that will create enough energy to power 132,000 homes.
This project is being built on about 2,600 acres here in Riverside County, but the federal government is opening up a much larger piece of land, almost 11 million acres, for farming, clean energy farming.
The Desert Energy Plan in California targets land in 7 counties for development of clean energy, but also protects ecosystems and recreation space. Stone Manning calls the plan a model for the country.
about being really smart from the start and having our values laid out on a map about how we power our society, how we protect our lands for the future.
Solar development doesn't come without some controversy. The industry recently blasted the Commerce Department for launching an inquiry into whether imports of solar panels from Southeast Asia circumvent rules that limit imports from China.
There's a bit of a cognitive dissonance between the goals that we have and sort of the on-the-ground policy making that's being made.
Clean energy leaders say the commerce action could cost thousands of jobs and put 80% of planned solar projects at risk. One industry group saying the inquiry could be apocalyptic.
The damage, to a certain extent, is being done as we speak, insofar as shipments are getting delayed, and that will only compound on itself and create further supply chain issues.
The agency offering up federal land to build renewables isn't involved in the investigation and doesn't expect it to stop development.
I have incredible faith in American ingenuity that if we have to, we'll start building the solar panels here. The demand is clearly there for solar power, which means that the supply is going to come.
That demand coming from places like Ojai, California, where mother of two Michelle Ellison helped lead the charge to make renewable energy the first choice for her community.
I really became compelled to take action and do everything I could to protect my children's future. I'm concerned about what they're inheriting.
Ellison's family is working to reduce its carbon footprint with their own solar panels and electric car. And like many of her neighbors now, she has 100% renewable energy coming into her house. She's happy to see the government moving in a cleaner direction.
The magnitude, the urgency of the climate crisis necessitates policy-level change at all levels of government.
The type of change that would turn a seemingly barren wasteland into fertile ground for the future of our planet. Now, the Clearway project is expected to come online in 2024. And remember, this is just the first project the Bureau of Land Management has approved. More than 50 utility-scale onshore clean energy proposals out west are waiting for a green light.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Powering your home with solar, it's a bright idea if you can afford it. Believe it or not, you could qualify to have your home transition to solar for free. Our Philip Palmer shows us the smart energy solution.
For most homeowners in the U.S., it will take roughly 8 years to break even on a solar power investment. And that initial investment cost keeps many low-income families out of the renewable energy market. Families that could really use the savings that come from solar power.
To a working class family, stretching that dollar that they might have been paying for an electric bill, that can go towards savings for retirement, a better car, just a tank of gas, college tuition, whatever working class families need.
Grid Alternatives is a nonprofit working to provide economic and environmental justice through renewable energy, installing solar electric systems for qualifying families at no cost to the homeowner.
We want to fortify this community so that people here can live their best and healthiest lives, and we want to put something directly in their custody and in their pocketbooks.
One of the hardest parts of getting solar panels on more qualified homes is getting the customer to believe that installation, panels, maintenance is all actually free.
We're not here to try to force people to sign up. But we believe if we're able to empower them with the correct information, they're going to sign up themselves.
The reduction on the bill has been amazing.
Maria Madrigal is one of the first customers in the Pacoima-Sun Valley area to take advantage of Grid's state-funded program that helped lower her energy bill from over $700 to an almost embarrassingly low amount. What is it now?
My electricity bill? It was $14.
Having helped over 2,000 low-income families in L.A., Orange, and Ventura counties, Grid is still trying to get the word out to residents who might qualify for a program that can be part of a solution for the environment while also helping families do more than survive.
It shouldn't have to be, should I turn on my air conditioning so I can stay cool? It shouldn't be, how am I going to put food on my table because I'm paying all these high bills? We should have solutions that help people stay in their homes and help move towards the future.
Philip Palmer, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Here at 10, a developer is ready to cash in on solar energy. We told you yesterday how the new Inflation Reduction Act offers incentives to people who incorporate solar panels into new homes. Fox 13's Kelly Cowan talked to one developer about his plan.
James Ramos has built hundreds of homes across Tampa Bay, but he's never created any quite like these. That's because these new South Tampa townhomes will come equipped with their own solar panels. The new Inflation Reduction Act includes substantial tax credits for builders who incorporate certain green technology into their developments. And now Ramos is going all in on solar.
So for every $100,000 I spend on panels and storage, I'll get $30,000 put toward a decrease of my taxes.
And he won't be the only one who sees the savings. The panels and battery systems he installs in these new homes will mean lower energy bills for the folks who move in. And he believes that's something home buyers will start to expect in new construction.
You're going to see the demand, really strengthen.
Why?
And I think people are going to be seeking these developments and an opportunity to buy these homes that have this solar energy.
Ramos plans to add solar to 2 Tampa townhome communities already in development. And this week pitched a plan to Seminole Heights neighbors to transform a 3-acre dilapidated church property into a community where neighbors can generate and share solar energy.
Sharing electricity that came by way of solar to your neighbors when they need it most. So it's pretty unique.
Ramos may be one of the first developers to jump on solar communities in Tampa, but with significant government tax rebates now available, he's sure he'll soon be in good company.
The immediate developer now has a reason to actually pay attention to the solar energy world and actually take the time to really put this in their projects, because this is not, it's not an inexpensive option. So having this incentive is really going to turn some heads.
In Tampa, Kelly Cowan, Fox 13 News.
We need less of this and more of this to stay below 1.5 degrees. But time is running out.
We are sleepwalking to climate catastrophe.
Code red to the G7 countries. Code red to the G20.
Solar still only accounts for 3.7% of worldwide energy production. We desperately need more. But where can we put the solar panels? They need space on precious land. Land we need for towns, houses, and streets. Intact ecosystems and food. So how about putting them on existing farmland? Or on water? Or why not harvest the sun's energy much closer to it? What's the best way to build more solar panels without losing much needed space? Let's start back on Earth. Here we have a serious space issue. We're already using a lot of our soil to grow food. But what if we grew crops and generated energy at the same time? It's time for agrivoltaics. The idea behind it, double the harvest. To do this, modules are built in such a way that the soil beneath them can still be used for growing plants.
Whenever people hear about this, the primary reaction initially is, really?
This is Greg Barron Gafford. He's an Earth system scientist and researches how agrivoltaics work for different regions.
And the second one is, well, that makes so much sense. Why haven't we been doing it forever?
Yes, why? And what potential types are there? One is solar fences. The space in between the fences can be used to grow crops, for livestock, or for flower strips. Or the modules could be built in a way that gives the panels enough space to rotate towards the sun. Or high enough for farmers to be able to walk and work beneath them, and even enjoy some shade when the sun is really blazing. But how do plants fare growing under or near the panels?
We've been growing lots of different kinds of crops, things that you would see at your local farmer's market. So tomatoes, peppers, squash, aubergine, all of these different types of crops have seemed to do really well.
So the plants still get enough light. Tomatoes and chili peppers even doubled their yield when shaded by solar panels. That's because if they get too much sun, they get stressed and stop photosynthesizing, which means they stop growing. Farmers can use the generated solar energy directly on their farm, or they can sell it to others in the local area. Another plus, the photovoltaic or PV panels protect the plants growing underneath them from heavy rain and hail. Climate change means such extreme weather events are on the rise. One study conducted by the US Department of Energy found that 95% of tested PV modules resisted hail undamaged. And they're also useful in other extreme conditions. In a world that is getting hotter and hotter, the modules ensure that less water is needed for irrigation.
Just think if you spilled your coffee or your water, your tea in the shade versus the full sun, where will it stay wet longer? In the shade. We're finding that every time we irrigated, it would stay wet for 2 days instead of 2 hours.
So the panels help save water and protect the plants from overheating. And it works the other way around too, with the green plants cooling the underside of the modules, making them more effective. Interest in agrivoltaics is growing across the world, not only in Europe, but also in India, Japan, China, and many other countries. And dry regions in particular can really benefit from the combination technology. But, yes, there are a few buts. Not everything can be grown under the panels. Crops like wheat or millet require full sun to grow well. Researchers are looking into which panels and setups would be best for which crop. Some plants need bigger gaps between the panels. Corn and wheat would need taller ones, while shrubby soybeans would be fine with a more squat variety. Another issue, although solar power offers an attractive return, investment costs are still more than double those of ground-mounted PVs. And you can't use an entire field to grow food. The panel mounts take up between 1 to 12% of the space, depending on the crop and the PV system. But the trend for the coming years is promising. According to a market analysis institute, the global market is anticipated to grow by almost 40% in the next 5 years. In dry regions or those that rely heavily on agriculture, like India, Indonesia, and many African and South American countries, agrivoltaics could save a lot of land and water. Combining solar panels and farming is one way to solve the space problem. Another is to take the plunge and fit the solar panels on water. Floating photovoltaics or photovoltaics might just be the next big thing. The idea: solar panels are mounted on raft-like structures which float on a body of water.
Only a 10% coverage of all the reservoirs which are available in the world would give about 23 terawatt peak of installed capacity.
This is Thomas Reindl. He evaluates the economic and technological feasibility of large-scale floating PV systems.
And to put this into perspective, these 23 terawatts would generate as much electricity as the whole world needs today in a year.
You can already see what that could look like at one of the biggest floating solar farms in Singapore. Here, the solar plant floats on the surface of a reservoir and produces enough energy to power about 16,000 four-room flats in the city-state. The biggest floating farm in China even produces 5 times as much energy. And that's not all. Underneath the solar panels, you can farm fish in aquaculture pens, which can generate additional income. Floating PV projects may be particularly useful on hydropower dams. During the summer season, solar panels can generate electricity. And when it's wet, hydropower can kick in. The water also cools down the floating panels, making them more efficient. And by protecting the water surface from the sun, the panels reduce evaporation. A real gain in times of climate change when water is becoming ever more precious. Water scarcity is a huge issue, especially in arid regions like sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, or the Middle East. In extreme cases, up to 90% of rainfall can be lost through evaporation. Floating solar panels can help with this. According to a study in Jordan, the use of photovoltaic panels on reservoirs can reduce water loss by 42% compared to uncovered ones. And using such panels on inland water bodies is just the beginning.
They are aiming for these vast spaces, ocean spaces, in between offshore wind farms. So in offshore wind farms, the towers are spaced very far apart, and then the spaces in between can actually be used for floating solar. And then you can use also the existing transmission infrastructure, which is already there for the wind farm.
And floating the panels on oceans is even more effective than on reservoirs. Ocean panels generate up to 13% more energy because the ocean cools the system more than a lake or lagoon could. No land use, more efficient energy generation, less water evaporation, and additional profits from fish farms. Why are we only doing this now? Partly because of the cost. Floating solar needs specialized equipment and specially trained installers. The panels and structures have to withstand wind, waves, and corrosion, meaning they have a shorter lifespan than those on land. This makes the electricity generated 2 to 20% more expensive today, but experts say that the price will go down significantly in the future.
One other aspect is the environmental impact on the reservoir and on the nature. So this is something which there is no clear answer to that. Every single project needs to do a very detailed environmental and also social impact assessment study.
On the one hand, floating PV can reduce algal blooms, lowering health risks and water treatment costs. But changes to water chemistry can also cause nitrification and loss of oxygen. So far, though, multiple studies have not found any severe impact on either water quality or ecosystems. Experts expect photovoltaics to expand by up to 30% annually over the next 5 years, with markets mainly in Asia. But Europe, Africa, and the US are starting to invest as well.
It's very encouraging to see that some of the largest projects in the world have obtained bank financing, and that's a major breakthrough.
So there's a good chance that a floating PV will soon be coming to a water body near you. Or in other words,
get into floating solar. The ocean is the limit.
So, any other places left to put solar panels? Here, there, or here? No. Up in space. Yep, getting as close to the sun as possible. Here the sun shines 24 hours a day and you need zero land on Earth. So why don't we put solar panels in the Earth's orbit? The idea first appeared in the short story Reason by Isaac Asimov in 1941. In the story, 2 engineers are assigned to a space station which supplies energy to planets via microwave beams. And now, the UK-led Space Energy Initiative, with around 50 partners from industry, government and science, is planning to install a solar power satellite in space by 2035. The US, China and Japan are also taking part in the Solar Space Power Quest. And this is how it might work. Satellites in the Earth's geostationary orbit, which is around 35,000 kilometers from Earth, collect solar energy using huge solar panels. They convert the energy into microwave radiation and beam it down to Earth. On the ground, a net of receiving antennas, or rectennas, collect the microwaves and convert them to electricity for the grid. First tests have shown that it works. The microwaves can pass through clouds or rain because they have the same frequency as Wi-Fi on Earth. Each satellite might produce 2 gigawatts of continuous power, as much as around 700 utility-scale wind turbines. They'd be huge, around 1.7 kilometers in diameter, and will weigh several thousand tons. They'd be transported into orbit by a fleet of reusable rockets. Robots could then puzzle the single modules together in space. Once finished, the satellites would start to beam energy to Earth 24 hours a day. The beam is considered to be harmless for animals and humans. It's about a quarter the strength of the midday sun. But energy is lost during the transmission and the conversion process. And the cost of getting the modules into space is, well, sky high. Today, taking even 1 kilogram of weight up into space costs around $3,000. Although the basic technical possibilities are there, the satellites have not yet been tested on a large scale. They'd also better never break down. Around 35,000 kilometers from Earth, the satellites will be nearly impossible to repair and maintain. But even if we manage to build and finance solar power satellites in the next decades, we need more solar power to combat climate change now. And there are already far more realistic ways of generating solar energy quickly without losing urgently needed land. And all of them are cheaper, faster, and much more promising.